Good evening. It's Sunday Smoke again.
Hey, how are you?
With in-studio guests, the freight train. We are going to talk about things that are hard to talk about, or why things are hard to talk about. I shouldn't tap on the desk because it makes background noise.
Yeah.
But, that's just me. It's just me.
And that's one way things can be hard to talk about, background noise.
But it's great to have the train back in studio because he has been MIA a little bit because, we're revamped the studio or the podcast, not the studio.
And it's nice.
It's nice. I got stuff on the background. We got the new podcast, which hopefully all the millions and millions of followers have been seeing, the little Instagram struggle. I would say I'm putting stuff out there, but it's a little struggle.
Yeah, you would think after doing all this, we would have showered and, before we got on video and presented better. But no, we worked out first. Yeah, it's
worked out at House Family Fitness, which is the sister company or sister podcast of this podcast. Or the divorced podcast, actually, I should say. Because there was one in the same, and now I'm going to, push it out and have its own podcast. Like, House Family Fitness is going to do
a divorced podcast. That makes it sound sad.
It's not sad.
It's a separate podcast.
Separate, which is
it's an independent podcast.
Independent.
Let's celebrate independence.
Yes, wait, independent. And it's Independence Weekend, right?
I know.
Look at that. It always melds together. It's amazing. It's amazing how it does that.
Like slices of cheese.
That meld together?
On cheese toast.
On cheese toast in a hot skillet.
Yeah.
I know.
No.
That is a needle pulling thread, even though that's not his usual statement.
It's not.
Oh, we're going to talk about why it is hard to talk about certain things. Certain things. It's not hard to talk about things. It's hard to talk about certain things.
We're going to list the things we've been thinking about that are things that are hard to talk about. And we're not necessarily going to talk about the hard to talk about things. We're going to talk about why those things are hard to talk about. Because maybe understanding why it's hard to talk about them is a step towards being able to just talk.
That's right, to be able to talk about them. It's the subjects that are hard to talk about.
Subjects that are hard to talk about.
Yes, perfect way of saying that. We can list the different things, the subjects. So it could be politics, it could be religion, it could be education. What's hard to talk about? What do you think is hard to talk about? It's like current events.
Current events hard to talk about because current events are not ever reported without bias. It's hard to get something without bias. And the thing is, it's hard, especially now, to get something without a pronounced bias.
Correct.
And so it's hard to talk about current events because you never know who you're talking to. And that's weird. And that's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. Unfortunate is a better word, but it's very sad. Because everybody wants to be on a team or in a village or in a tribe or be defined by a view, right? Or a supposed side of the view. But I understand why people have different sides. Because it is all based on inputs, experiences, like what you listen to, who you hang around with, how you're brought up. It's no fault. It's a belief. It's more of a belief. You have a set of beliefs. And if I say my belief is different than yours, looking at the same object, you find offense or you find stress. I won't say offense. I don't think you'll find offense. People find offense. He won't find offense. Because if I say something different, I am taking something away from you. I'm saying that your belief is different or your experience has been different about the same thing. Does that make any sense?
It does. And the thing I go back to is a line in a song I heard was, "Those who dance were thought to be insane." And I went and looked that up because that seemed like such an odd thing to say. And people give Nietzsche credit for it. And he was alive at the same time, but there's no record of him saying it. But, he may have agreed with it. But the oldest reference to it they could find was early 1900s, was an adage, is those who dance were thought insane by those who could not hear the music. And if you think about that, the first thing you think, just naturally as a human, you think, well, that's what's wrong with those people. They don't hear the music I'm hearing, you know? And then you got to think, wait a minute, what if I don't hear the music?
And that's really hard to think about.
It is hard to think about. It's hard to say, wait a minute, what if I'm the one that doesn't understand what's going on because I can't hear the music?
Or you haven't heard the music yet, or the music hasn't been presented to you yet.
That's something I think about, is I try not to judge people. I try to understand people. I try to understand why they would think that, why they think the way they think, mm-hmm. whether I agree with them or especially if I don't agree with them, I want to know why they think that way.
It takes a lot of empathy, compassion, understanding for you to think that way. For somebody to come to you and have a different thought process or a different opinion, which is a buzzword everything is an opinion about a subject, but it's actually a challenge to you for somebody to have a different opinion, and you have enough compassion, empathy, understanding, forgiveness, maybe even respect, all that stuff. That's really hard as a person to give to that other person when it's opposing, right?
Yeah.
So I challenge everybody to think that way. It's like, it's my responsibility to do all that for the person that's standing in front of me or talking to.
Yep. And I'm going to go ahead and be topical.
Topical?
Well, when there's something going on, like,
I wouldn't go into subjects.
Like the attacking of nuclear facilities, for example, we need to be able to discuss that without yelling.
Correct.
We need to be able to come up with answers and solutions.
Or just know what happened without trying to point, this went wrong, this went right, I did this because it was right, I did this because it was wrong, you did this because it was wrong. That's what it's boiled down to lately. Actually, I think I wrote in the notes, which I was going to pull up and I didn't, that I came up with this thought the other day. Most people now in the society, I won't say society, that's a bad term, in current inputs, or I don't want to go back into the socials. I've done way too much of that the past 2 weeks. People listen to what's going on for the ability to respond, not the ability to understand. That's my little philosophy thinkings of this week. Does that make sense? People listen so they can make a response, not to understand. That's your deep thought of the week or the day, however you do your deep thoughts.
Well, it is. That's something I struggle with is people who you say a word to them, a charged, you say something with a charged buzzword in it, mm-hmm. and there's an expected response. And it's like, okay, so I know you've been watching this, so I know you've been watching that, because of just the response. And it's just so messed up.
It's sad. And I brought up with Miss Vulcan one night when we were outside talking, because we have a little opine sessions, I would like to say. Like, we like to talk about things and bring out different ideas. And we were talking about fellow people that we know, or acquaintances is a better way of saying that. And they were bringing up something a subject they were talking about. And they said, well, if anybody ever questions me about it, I'm just going to bring up this scale of bias. And I said, I have a big problem with that. Ms. Vulcan looked at me and goes, what do you mean? I said, that we actually have a tool that shows you a scale of bias of whatever you're looking at. I said, but now we have to have that, first of all, which is sad. And then it's like, who's making the tool?
Yeah.
It makes me sad as a human that we have to have a tool like that. It's like, okay, well, I need to look at this and see what on this chart, which way it's leaning, instead of just getting the information.
Well, and that's one thing is you learn to recognize when you're being manipulated. And once you really learn to recognize it, you can hear it every time it happens. This will make you a bitter and hateful person. It might be better if you don't, but I did. And so I really, when I watch any news from any source, I can hear it. I can hear the little bit of news and the great big bit of bias and determine what's actually important to me.
I can challenge everybody. They're going to say one of two things when I show you the cover of this book or tell you the cover of this book. But actually, two things you will tell me. You will say, thank you, and right behind that, you will say, fuck you. It's manufacturing consent or content, depending on how you look at the title. I don't know if I can show it if it's like Noam Chomsky. If you can see the cool little cover here. It says consent, but there's a little cutout with the T, and it says, and all of a sudden it's content. Now, I go ahead and give you a heads up. It's kind of like reading a textbook / encyclopedia because the prose that is used in it is not like, it's just not a pleasure to read.
It's not conversational.
It's not conversational, but it goes into the history of media, who owns the media, advertising in media, while people not maliciously have bias, but there is bias because we are humans. I mean, you are influenced by different things, like intentionally or unintentionally. And this book was actually written, let me find, I want to say in the 80s. First publication, 1988. And this is the 2002 edition, revised edition or whatever, because of the prologue. But yes, that book right there, I think I'd said it before. I don't want to come off sound like a cynic, but that book right there makes me think about everything I read, see, or hear that is digested from somebody else, which is honestly opinion, even though it's not an opinion article. I look now, I don't know if it's to the benefit, but I look at it and see why they're changing certain verbiage in there. That's why I say you'll say thank you, because I won't say enlightened, but it's making me look at it. But then you'll say fuck you because now you're looking at everything.
No, I get it. Just the little bitty things, the tiny things.
Tiny things.
It's the way they nudge you. Just word choice.
Yes, the word choices, or they'll say something about this person, and then the next person they don't put their title in it, but this person had a title, but they both have titles, and it's like that's an immediate bias right there. You're like elevating this person to this one, and it's like, oh my god, it's like, why am I looking at all the little stuff now?
Right. No, but I get it. I mean,
but that's one of the things we're talking about. It makes it hard to talk to other people about things because the way I was brought up, the way Freight was brought up, two different ways because we didn't live in the same house. And you went to this certain school, I went to this certain school, different people around you, so different inputs. So that influences your beliefs. I have beliefs, you have beliefs. And guess what? They're probably not the same on everything.
No.
They're probably pretty close on a lot of things. Like-minded people, like, adhere to each other, or not adhere, or congregate to each other.
We're not adhering.
We'll never adhere. That right there. I don't know if you can tell. I have my little offset light over here. But it's sad because, I don't know, I get out in the public a lot with some of my travels I do, and different people from all over the country come to these events I go to. And you have people that live in the Northwest, Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, and certain things are taboo to talk about in just general conversation because everybody's nervous to talk about it because they're afraid it's going to be difficult because people will probably get angered or get their feelings hurt. And that makes my heart sad.
Yep.
I mean, and I see there's...
And the thing is, I mean, it's not that you need to get your feelings hurt, but you need to be exposed to different thinking. You need to think, what if I don't hear the music?
If you've never heard the music.
And that is
the first time hearing the music. And
honest to God, that is that thought. I mean, what if I don't hear the music? I mean, that has haunted me for about the past year and a half since I really looked it up and started thinking about it. Mm-hmm. That has haunted me. Mm-hmm. You know, the Wanton Bishops. They do like Mississippi blues, kinda. They're a Lebanese band. They're actually from Beirut. Anyway, I was
gonna give them a shout out.
Okay. Anyway, that is where that came from. Is where there's a text message away from
I'm just going to give the wonton bishops their email. Oh my God. Look, I am to the point now for passwords and two-step verification. I would rather have like a little pinprick right here in front of me that I would just go and you get a blood sample, so I don't have to remember this stuff.
It's cumbersome, and people talk about the implantable technology, but if it was me, if I could just go, yeah, it's me, that would be great. Maybe I'm giving something up. Anyway, these guys, I came across them. Spotify I let my Spotify wander, and this guy actually came to America, went to Mississippi, did the whole Roadhouse thing, like Crossroads, where Ralph Moss show. He did something like that, and went back home, and got together with a friend that does Lebanese pop, and they do kind of a blend of Mississippi blues and Lebanese pop. Okay,
that's what I wanted. Because now, the wizard that I am.
Oh, it's coming. You can't wait, can you? Here it is.
There it is. Well, that's not the picture I wanted. That's okay. That's the people we're talking about, the wonton bishops. Shout out to them if they would really love to sponsor the podcast and send us free music on Spotify. Is that how that works?
I don't know.
No. Yeah, because they're the ones you heard, or what you heard.
I mean, honest to God, there's...
You heard the music from them, right? You heard the music from them.
Well, yeah.
The statement, yes.
But there's also been a lot of, war where they are, which brings us back to things that are hard to talk about.
It is. It's hard to talk about things.
And it's because, and like I said, it's not war is hard to talk about. It is. But it's not the talking about war part that's necessarily as hard as not wanting to say anything that's going to upset the person in front of you.
Okay, I was going to bring that point up. Things aren't hard to talk about. It's hard for people to talk about the things.
That
sounds stupid.
It's fear.
It's fear because they're afraid they're going to offend or upset somebody else, and it's going to turn into something else, into an argument, and it does a lot of time. And in our current time, it turns into a dispute, is a better word, because people get their feelings hurt about different opinion, which I don't know, because it's a different opinion. I mean, there's a lot of thought that I've done about this because we have a list of shared notes about different podcast topics. But everything you hear is opinion. I mean, that sounds stupid. I mean, the definition of opinion is that, right?
Right.
But anybody, from whatever they've heard or seen or how they got the information, is from somebody else, and not being nefarious. That person translates it from their experience. Okay, it's like the old telephone little thing. You talk and you say something, and as it goes down to the 10th or 15th person, that message has changed. So by the time you hear something, that's opinion. You get it, I say it, it's opinion. So it's changed in my beliefs. I put my own little different things on it, and then you hear it, and think about that. The first time you hear it from Jason, he might have heard it for the 10th or 15th time from somebody else.
Right.
Technically. I mean, granted, and we all watch the same screen on certain things, but that's what I think about opinion. Everything you hear is opinion, not being malicious, but it is you put your own touch to it no matter what you do.
Well, it's opinion. I mean, that's one of the most accurate descriptions of history, written history I've ever heard. Cynical as hell, but history is what happened according to the winners.
Correct.
Because the guys that lost, their story doesn't really matter,
Now we live in a time where, I don't want to say winners and losers, but the opposing side, one side that won, one side that lost. So there's opposing sides. So now you can hear both sides, right?
Well, I mean, now you hear both sides.
I mean, I'm talking about subjects.
But the one that becomes history.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
In Oklahoma, the one that becomes history is dictated by the winners,
Yes.
Especially in Oklahoma.
Well, and another part of my philosophy, psychology, I don't know. Everybody wants to be part of a village. So, and it's even more, I see it even more in people. Because that's why we're all labeled, or everybody wants to, we're not all labeled. Everybody wants to be labeled on I'm going to say the upside or the downside instead of, because that's too much of a buzzword, and I hate buzzwords. You can't be on the horizon. You either have to be up here or here. If you look at it this way, it's like you're on this side or this side. Makes sense. If somebody says that you're on the upside versus the downside, well, they automatically are going to give you friction because you have different beliefs you think. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
It does.
It feels like a little rambling.
No, but I think that's why. I think that's why comedy is important.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because
the first podcast was about humor. Or I'm sorry.
I read Stranger in a Strange Land, and the whole premise of the book is there was a guy that was born and raised on Mars. Anyway, it's a lot of suspension of disbelief. It winds up being an analogy for the life of Christ. But in that book, I read the most concise explanation of humor I've ever read. Is laughter is what takes the pain away. And so I think if you can say something to somebody, maybe even something that hurts their feelings, but say it in a way that also makes them laugh, well, then they got to think about it.
That's true.
And then it's not so much what I think, it's what you think. Once you laugh at it, it's okay, why did you think that was funny?
See, what's amazing is this actually rolls into the first podcast. Yeah, the first podcast we talked about humor. See, all this stuff, I brought it up with the one that's not here, Dirtbag. All of our subjects intertwine so much. Because you're talking about the humor. Well, that humor I brought up to him, when you have that connection, it actually brings a connection. It makes you have a relationship. Might leave that in. Because it makes it easier to talk to each other about whatever subject you're talking about. Because now I've established a little relationship. Now we're almost in the same village. Right?
Yeah, once you laugh with somebody, you've shared something.
Yes.
You've become humans together, and then it's harder to, you've humanized them.
Yes.
You've humanized them.
Yeah. The horror.
Well, it's just,
I know.
Once you laugh with somebody, you've shared something with them, and that's a real thing. It's like, hey, you and I, we thought alike there for just a second. What can we do with that?
Okay, well, we can get a little bit deeper into it. It's like, why do you think people get so angry when you have opposing, I don't say views, opposing opinions, views about the same subject? I mean, you can be in two different villages,
yeah.
But why do people get so angry so fast now? Why do you think that is? Do you have any thoughts on why
it
becomes
why people are so angry so fast?
Why it becomes a dispute so quick when you talk about something from two different angles?
Well, because here's what I think. And
go for it. I mean, we're not. Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. I squarely blame Rush Limbaugh. I really do. because I'm through no fault of my own exposed to stuff like that sometimes. Once upon a time when he was on the air, I actually heard the man say on more than one occasion, now let me tell you how you ought to think about that. And the thing is he is, and I'm not saying it's just him, because I watch CNN a lot too, and it gets characterized both ways. They say, well, here's what we think, and here's what other people think and why. And they'll say, here's what we think, and there are good reasons for all this, and here's what they think and why. And all their reasons are stupid. And that's not true. And then you can change the channel, and they'll say, well, here's what we think, and here's all our really reasonable reasons for believing this way, and here's what they think, and here's why it's stupid that they think that way, and that's not true. So that if somebody has this opinion, and you express this opinion, well, they automatically believe that you believe all this stupid stuff, and so they're already done. They're not waiting to see what you think. They already assume they know.
That's the whole subject of this. Yeah, our discussion is like, why do people get so opposed to each other? when you have a different point of view, because now I'm saying you're stupid because my point of view is better, right? I mean, that's like in a nutshell, kind of what the same thing you're saying.
Yeah, and the thing is I've changed my mind about things.
Yes.
And there are people that and I understand why there are people that will say that, well, I don't have any firm beliefs, or I wouldn't be changing my mind all the time. And the thing is my firm belief is in knowledge, and introduction of new knowledge occasionally changes my beliefs.
Yes. You should be appreciative if somebody shows you something that you were wrong about, instead of getting angry, right? Like if I say the capital of Alabama is Mobile, and then you say, no, dummy, it's Montgomery, well, that shouldn't piss you off. You should be thankful. And that's really hard to do. If they actually show you your error. And what you're like, but we can't do that. In our species, we can't do that.
I get what you're saying, but what you're saying is, I get what you're saying, but you're talking about like state capitals, which is.
Well, I mean, I'm just using the principle.
Yeah, the principle
of it.
But you're talking about like a bigger concept, like like if we had. Throwing this out there, if we had differing views on abortion or something, and I said, well, it's this way, and you go, no, it's this way, and I go,
well, you're stupid. Yeah,
but what I could go is just listen to what he has to say and go, you know what? Or maybe vice versa. Or maybe we both listen to each other for a little while and we figure out a third option.
I mean, you have to have compassion, understanding, empathy, and forgiveness to another person.
Yeah. And
that's really hard on this person, like going to the person trying to tell you something that you don't believe or see or have heard or whatever subject it is. Is that getting too deep into philosophy?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what our reviews are going to say.
No, the reviews are going to be outstanding. It's going to be like right now.
Like these guys wander off into some crazy shit.
This machine right now is holding on for dear life because it knows it's about to go viral. It's going to melt. I'll come down here in the morning and this keyboard will be over there in the floor all the way to the door. Yes, in the bubble. I'll leave you with this. This is another. I read it. I can't remember. I'm probably going to misquote it because I'm not going to quote where I read it. How egregious is the action of anger as opposed to the original insult?
Yep.
Yes, because we do things in anger because we feel insulted. So how egregious is our response in anger to the original insult? If you always think about that, you will probably keep your mouth closed a lot more.
I can agree with that. And that's. I mean, once you really look at what was the problem in the first place, So
I'll put notes in here so I can have the copyright not taken away for misquoting somebody that I don't know who it is.
Well, if that was a misquote, then it's actually
genius, right?
You're the author of the first guy. I like it. I think
genius.
It really is. Buddy.
You go, buddy. Oh yeah, that was great. It was a great return for the freight train in studio. So we're going to still work on, even though we're not in the same place all the time, we're going to get the technology better so we can still do the podcast. If Vulcan is in Northeast, Southwest, Arctic, whatever, and freight is in a bubble in the ocean, in a submarine, whatever, we'll make it work.
Might even light both sides of my face. You don't know.
You never can tell. We'll work on that.
Right now, my nose is creating an eclipse. Stop.
You just wait. Just wait till I edit this. There will be graphics. I'm like right here. I'm gonna hold it right here. It's gonna be a graphic right there.
So sorry, guys. I'm so sorry.
Until we meet again. Peace.
See y'all.